welcome Warren with us, and Mary Kupiara, who has been leading the work at our district at the grant level. And one of my teachers actually presented our ESL state conference last week, and she presented, she said it all began with a juicy sentence. And then she was sort of like really juicy about it too. So that stuck with the audience, and it all began with a juicy sentence. And I think that in terms of, you know, and we're honored to have Dr. Lily Wong here as well with us today, but in terms of what this has been able to do is develop the understanding for the district around Common Core shifts and standards, but more specifically, it's really the teachers and leaders, so that their key, that their practices have really been key to bring about those necessary shifts around language and literacy instruction through content, so that ELLs are accessing, and language minorities are accessing the Common Core. In the 3 L's theory of action, if we align instructional practices, materials, curriculum, and use of data to Common Core state standards, we can focus on deepening instructional shifts so that teachers are equipped to prepare ELLs for 21st century skills for college and career readiness. We know that obviously there's a combination in terms of this approach that the learning, we know is that learning is essential. It's the umbrella. What is that content? Building knowledge through content and rich nonfiction. Literacy is really around the speaking, reading, and writing that's grounded in evidence from the text, which is both literary and informational. And language is that regular practice with complex text and its syntax and vocabulary. And you'll obviously hear some of the synonyms around, right, the Common Core shifts. But this is our pedagogy and our sort of framework of thinking behind our design, or at least in terms of selected material and moreover design of curriculum. So this is our initiative that we've been a part of for the past, actually this is our 3rd year. We started later in our 1st year with a cohort of teachers from a Hennigan school. But the 3 L's is English language learners need learning, language, and literacy. In this initiative, the purpose is to provide PD for teachers, administrators, and district leaders on how to revision ELL instruction curriculum by building academic language and increasing rigor through complex text and tasks, which is one of the major shifts in Common Core. And I want to just sort of highlight the administrators because I think the success last year when we started our cohorts, I mandated the principals sign up with their teachers and participate. So they have been co-learners through the process. We have about 20 schools altogether who are part of the elementary and secondary cohort who are going through the PD. In addition, we have lab sites. We have 1 elementary, we have 1 middle lab site, we have 2 high school lab sites. One of those high schools is our Newcomer Academy High School, so they're serving all ELL variety of populations from site to long-term ELLs. And this sort of talks a little more about the initiative plan and the complex text. As you see here, the learning objectives is highlighted. The complex text is across our sort of objective from exploring text selection, from simplified to challenging to more complex, really sort of leading teachers to think about when you select a theme, a unit that you're developing, to select text that builds around the depthness and understanding, so you're building knowledge to get more into that deepening of knowledge around the content. So the complexity of text is essential to this work and has really sort of driven us to get to this point. These are some of the elements of 3 L's, so essential question, motivation, some of that is around academic frameworks, motivating students with visual videos, for example, wordplay, lots of different ways of stretching the words, really kind of doing a generative study of words, lots of visuals incorporated, juicy sentences, really selecting a sentence that is tied to that essential question so that students are actually becoming agents, are grappling with the sentence, are deconstructing, reading, and reconstructing and mapping it back. So this is really the key work here with the 3 L's and this approach. And again, the close reading of text, talk sessions, which is really a key that applies to the text-dependent questions, so that those text-dependent questions are part of the discussion and academic conversations. And we have lots of great examples about the differentiated group work. This is an example of a K2 ELD1 at the left here. And I don't think you can read this clearly here, but this has illustrated illustrate and explain how the blue-winged grasshopper defends itself. This task here for the K2 ELD, and again, these are differentiated tasks. The question is, argue, is it important that the blue-winged grasshopper has two bright blue captions? Why or why not? And I think you can see the writing here. It speaks for itself, right? I mean, you see the language embedded, the learning, and the literacy. And I'm going to move on to a couple more examples for the sake of time. Here we have a first grade ELD. Again, if you look at the task, choose one or two vocabulary words, illustrate the word to show what it means, and then use it in a sentence. The student over here to the left is an ELD 2, first grade, and they chose torment. And if you look at the sentence, you look at the language, how they use the word tormenting. My brother keeps tormenting me. Makes perfect sense. And the second sentence is tied back to the text. The giraffe is tormented by the bugs. But look at the language structure, right? Look at the suffix that's been used from torment to tormenting to tormented. And here, this is another wonderful example of this work in the second grade, when you have to pick one animal partnership and explain why it is a symbiotic relationship.
Can you read it for us?
Absolutely. So giraffe, an oxpecker, plover, crocodile. So they have a choice. The symbiotic relationship about the plover and the crocodile is they both get what they want. The plover gets food and the crocodile gets clean teeth. The plover warns the crocodile when danger is coming. The crocodile will eat anything that can fit in its mouth and will not eat the plover. This is, when I say I'm excited, this is what's exciting about this work. When you see the student engagement, you see the output, it is due to the input. It is not just the text, it is part of how the teachers teach and how they apply the learning from the PE to be able to scaffold appropriately and differentiate these tasks. This is another example that I'm going to quickly walk through because it's also important for you to know that we are using this work with SITE students with interrupted formal education. This Wampanoag text we had actually used in the PE. This teacher was new this year to the cohort, so we had a new PE in October. So we'd use some of the text, and she decided to use the student and really do an extension of it with her SITE students in middle school. And if you look just at the first sentences in those two paragraphs, at this time, Wampanoag people lived in America. European people came to Massachusetts to make a colony. Wampanoag people ate good food. So, you know, there is, when you read through the text, there is the learning, but you can look at there is no simplified sentence structure to begin with. You look at the next one, when European came to the Wampanoag, they was looking for gold. So, it is not, again, this SVO, right, the sentence, verb, object, sort of simplified order of learning, grammar, sentence structure. It's very much a high level. And given that this is the beginning of the year, newcomer SITE, this is amazing, amazing to be able to see this work. So I'm going to move us to the next, because I don't have a lot of time, but I think it's important that when we're thinking about materials, that we're thinking about what is the end result, where do we want students to perform? And so the BPS process here this year, we have a strategic plan that I started with in terms of where we need to finalize our K-5 curriculum maps in text, and as well as our secondary for middle and high school. So we've applied the ELD 2.0 framework, which has really lent itself nicely to how we think about ESL instruction, that focused language study. We also really, again, kind of outlined into the delivery model, did a lot of research around Common Core aligned materials, and then looked at the IMET tool prior to having this document and the wonderful ELL considerations. And we're in a process of, we have pilots of the curriculum materials in 5 schools. So the goal is that next year we will have a district adoption for materials in grades 6 to 12. And again, this is just part of the strategic plan. So again, you see that year 2, we're really looking at ELDs 1 to 3 and site ESL instruction. So doing a lot of the research and pilot this year. And that hopefully next year will lead us to developing the curriculum materials and guidance, as well as this beginning of this year, we disseminated some more text sets for our elementary schools. And this is a lot of language, but I just wanted you to see how we were able to sort of take the 2.0 ELD framework and sort of plot it out for Boston. And again, this is the what. Our state gave us a little bit of definition. I've added to it from other areas. Our state actually had the state of address. Last week they had a state of address. And they said, well, our next goal is to define ESL. So that's a process, I'm sure. So for our end, it's also driven by the DOJ. And as you can see here, we love that the DOJ has sort of given us some structure and framework to move some areas forward. But I think these are the concerns that we really should have to think about: flexibility, that it's not just sort of homogeneous grouping and structure, that students in ELD 1 and 2 should only receive this amount of instruction and this particular type of instructional delivery. So moving forward here, we have the VBS curriculum model is both a combined and concurrent. Our combined ELA and ELD really starts for our beginner ELD 1, 2, and 3 students, so that it replaces their ELA, where our concurrent is mainly for students in level 4 and 5 who are in general ed classrooms with embedded ESL. So I'm going to just quickly sort of walk through some images of our text sets. Last year, we developed a curriculum as well as adopted the REACH sets for our SEI, which we're in SEI State in Massachusetts, so we have the REACH. This year, what I did was actually have a specialized course set of materials. Those are all these text sets that align to the theme, because there is, to my finding at this point, maybe there's more to come, there is no perfect set of basal core curriculum. You have to be flexible, and you have to approach it with the mindset of what is the end result. We're thinking about a unit assessment, unit essential question, what ties into that unit? So this sort of allows for us to really kind of give more resources as well as offer flexibility for teachers. And this is just to kind of go over some of the other supplementary materials that we provided with our K-5, and as well as intervention materials that are aligned to the core. And this is just an example that I quickly just wanted to highlight, just to kind of walk you through our inquiry selection, is really that core material. And you can see here, for example, in week 3, we have, and I'm not endorsing REACH, but this is what we have in the district, but I do want to highlight that the week 3 is a selection from the National Geographic Explorer book, so the teachers received that this fall. There are also lots of online texts and online exemplars that we've aligned to the curriculum that the teachers access, but by no means is that any simplified low-level text that is very much grade level in nonfiction and very engaging. So I think that, again, it speaks to really thinking of overall what is your outcome and your goal. So this is where we're heading right now. I have a pilot of materials, which I won't mention, which material sets, but we have 5 schools in different ELD levels are grouped together. For example, in 6 to 8, many of the students are grouped together for ESL. Similarly to grades 9 to 12, many of our 9 and 10th graders are grouped together, and 11 and 12th graders are grouped together. So we need to really think about how do we approach this in a classroom setting. So we know that this material is Common Core aligned to some degree. We haven't done the full sort of evaluation with the new metrics, with the ELL considerations. But we really wanted to have our teachers who have been part of the 3Ls work and are sort of seen as more leaders in the district to be a part of this pilot. And then they offer us in classrooms as a learning tool for us to really sort of take that information back and think about how do we sort of use this to develop guidance for teachers. We also are piloting a PE, so that is for all of the materials, in addition to some of the digital text, online components, as well as crafting some lesson plans that sort of align more around the instructional curriculum. So when we have that sort of wrapped up, our next steps here, which we'll get to, and we'll move forward with our final review of the selected units. And again, it's going to be really important that we look at those ELL considerations and the metrics that are part of the instructional materials to really think through all of those areas and where they fall in the rubric for our pilots. And one of the considerations that I want to leave you with is many of the materials are developed by grade level standards, but are, let's say, level A, B, and C. And so depending on your grouping, you really have to think about how to approach it from a standards perspective and align it to ELA, that it maybe is a blended standard alignment with the curriculum, and that's just something that